Hello everybody, welcome back to our Intro to Python workshop. So in the previous video, we have covered if statements, variables, and loops. But while these constructs are very important, um, there are some data structures that we should get ourselves familiar with before we dive into the libraries that we'll use in the later parts of the Udemy course. By data structures, I mean lists, tuples, and dictionaries. So let's kick it off. So a list is essentially a collection of items. You might have known it or seen it as an array, but in Python, you can declare a list as such, right? So you can use the brackets and then put your elements separated by commas. You can retrieve elements by indices. In Python, lists are zero index, so the first element right here is index 0, index 1, index 2, and so on. So you can index the first element, the last element, and the best part about a list is, in this case, you can actually update the elements in a list. So, for example, this line here will take the element at index 1 and update it to 23. So we can have more than one type of element too in a list. So if we run the cell, right? Yeah, give it a moment. Deep Note should be starting up its hardware. So great. So the output is as we expect. So that takes care of lists. There's another type of data structure called the tuple. So while a tuple might sound like a list, there's a subtle difference. So in lists we can update entries. In tuples we cannot update entries. So you declare tuple, like instead of using brackets, you use parentheses and separate your elements by commas. You can still access elements in a tuple just like you do with lists, but we cannot update elements in a tuple. So for example, this line here that takes the element at index 2 and attempts to update it to 5 would cause an error. So we see here we get a type error. Tuple object doesn't support item assignment. It's because tuples are what we call immutable. So once you declare the tuple, you can't update the elements. Another cool data structure, and one of my favorite data structures in Python, is called dictionary. I use it each and every day, like whenever I work with Python. So I think it's important to know. So dictionary is what we call a key value mapping data structure, right? So you have a key and it maps to a value. So for example, in this dictionary, data science is a key and fun is the value that the key data science maps to. GPA is a key and it maps the value 4. And best numbers is a key that maps to a list containing 3 and 4. So when you make a dictionary, you use curly braces. The key goes on the left and there's a colon in the middle and the value goes on the right. So key value. You can still look up elements in a dictionary, but using the key. So you can just you can use similar syntax you use for Python lists, except instead of passing in a numerical index, you pass in the key. So for example, if I want to look up what the value associated with the key data science is, I would use this construct here, right? So what that will do is I will go into this dictionary D, look for where data science is as a key, and we'll see that it maps to fun. So I'm going to print fun right here. We can even reassign the value of keys. So just take the key you want and just set it equal to what you want the new value to be. We can even add keys to a dictionary by doing the similar syntax to assigning values of keys. So Python is kind of smart in that if a key doesn't exist, it'll just add it for you. And we can print the dictionary to see what the key value pairs are. So when we run this cell right here, right, we get that this guy is fun, right, as we've seen. And we have updated the key of best numbers to 9900 and birds are real mapping to false. So you see those updates here. And the last thing that's important with Python is functions. So functions help improve code reusability and readability. We will use them a lot, especially in the exercises and in the later workshops in this bootcamp series. But functions essentially use a syntax called the def keyword. So this is define. You specify the function name, you specify a parameter. So what are your inputs of the function? You add your logic here. And then when you want to call the function, you just call the function name and supply your inputs. So this is an example with the add function. We take in two numbers, A and B, and then we're going to return its sum. So this is examples of how you use the add function. And the output you get here is what you expect. One thing that's really important in this bootcamp is having a solid foundation of Python. And if you're really rusty, I recommend reading a book called Python for Everybody by Charles Severance. It's really important to have your foundation solid before we move on to the next workshop. So see you in the next video.